crackberry.com.
Hey everybody, Adam here for crackberry.com. We have RIM's 2012 annual general meeting today. Kevin is live on location in Waterloo. Myself, Blaze, and Chris Umiastowski will be checking out the meeting and doing a little commentary. Here we go.
That concludes our question period. And so this concludes the formal part of our meeting. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Yay.
Wow, so they cut it off.
That's that.
They cut off the Q&A session pretty quickly.
Well, they asked pretty lengthy questions, I think, or had pretty lengthy comments. Kind of ate up the time a little bit.
I have seen a
think
lot
they should
longer
let it go all day
AGMs.
if they want.
What was that?
So I think they should let the Q&A sessions go all day. If people got questions, they deserve the answers.
Yeah, they would go all day if the company let them. It's
Yeah, but
I
that's
think
the thing.
even
I think they should let them go until, a certain period of time. Like, what was that? That was like, 35, 45 minutes maybe?
Yeah, it was a while. I think they could have let it go on a little longer because, people are frustrated and it's a sign of respect to your shareholders to let people ask questions. That said, you got to draw a line somewhere. Personally, I think that given where they are, they should have let it go on a little longer.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Now's not the time to make a swift exit off the stage. Now's the time to actually take the stage and get your message out there.
Yeah, exactly. I hate it when people go up and waste so much freaking time though talking about how pissed off they are instead of just asking good questions. Ask good questions. They're going to lead to interesting answers instead of just talking about how pissed off you are. Own your own freaking investment problems, and if you're not happy, sell your shares and move on.
What was with the security questions, Chris? I mean, those had no chance of being answered. They didn't apply to a wide audience, and they wasted two valuable slots. I
know, that guy should have been shown the door. I mean, he started talking about Nortel and security and Chinese hackers and, where the hell does this guy think he is? This is not a Nortel.
Kind of, personal vendetta that he wanted to get resolved there. I think quite a few of the guys, the guy that was talking about the accessories and...
Were they trolling at him? Is that the shareholder meetings version of trolling?
Live trolling of the
AGM. Maybe RIM planted those guys to ask irrelevant questions to waste time.
Yeah, they wanted to throw everyone off of, all the good questions, so they started asking about accessories and security.
Yeah.
Was it valid to ask about the non-Canadian board members? Is that, in a global market, is that important for RIM?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're an international company, and if your board consists entirely of Canadians who don't know, not that Canadians don't know anything about international business, but if you're a Canadian board, what are the chances that you really have a strong understanding of international business?
Or, as the questioner's point was, could help maybe smooth waters when RIM is dealing with Middle Eastern or subcontinental governments.
Exactly. Different customs, different knowledge, different procedures, different rules. It's good to have a diverse board in all ways. Skill sets, countries.
What would you have asked, Chris, if you'd had your turn at the mic?
If I had to pick one question, I'll go with my gut, which is, there's a lot of people out there who seem to think that RIM is going to be dead no matter what. It doesn't matter when BB10 comes out. It's too little, too late. So I would ask RIM to give me some sort of assessment as to how much business do they really think they're going to lose during this transition, and what are their plans to win back customers? What are they going to do from a promotional standpoint to get people to stick around, and what are they going to do to market the heck out of this when it's out there? That's probably the biggest question on my mind, because everyone seems to think, not everyone, but a lot of people seem to think RIM is gone, doesn't matter when they launch BB10, it's over.
You've made the case that they have, unlike Palm, for example, they have billions of dollars in the bank.
Yeah, they have 2 billion, 2.2 billion, but so let's get a couple of things clear. A lot of people have mentioned in the forum on the Crackberry blog post comment area that they think RIM is burning cash. I've seen professionals on TV say this. That's not true, right? So RIM is generating cash right now. However, they're making an accounting loss, an operating loss, and I'm not going to go through all the math to explain what the difference is, but the fact is the fact. The cash flow statement is the cash flow statement. They're generating a cash position that's growing right now, but they probably will start burning cash if their operating profit was to drop by another few $100 million a quarter, and then they could be running into a situation just like Palm. So Palm, if you guys remember, they didn't die because WebOS was a bad product or anything like that. I mean, and remember, they had Skype on WebOS. They died because they ran out of cash. I think they were down to something like $100 million when they tried to launch the Trio. What the heck?
The Palm Pre, and Verizon slammed the door on them really hard.
Yeah. So, they just ran out of cash, and RIM is not in as bad a position, but they could run out of cash too if they screw up this, last swing at the pitch.
The chat room is asking Adam why Kevin didn't go up and ask a question, but he was there as media. He wasn't there as John Q shareholder, right?
Yeah, he is a shareholder, which is, why he gets to go to the meeting. He actually bought, I think, 1 or 2 shares last year before the AGM so that he could attend the meeting. But he's there strictly as media, and we have plenty of resources that we can ask questions, 24/7 anytime we want. So it would have just been kind of an awkward situation for him to go up, among the other shareholders that,
I agree.
Don't have the available outlets for the questions. So that's, I know everybody wanted him to ask crazy questions and say, "Oh yeah, go Kevin," but it wasn't really the place for it. So
they wanted to see the T-shirt.
Yeah, I don't even know if he actually got the T-shirts or not. I think somebody screwed up somewhere, and I don't know that.
He had a printing problem.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like we said before, not huge stuff for the consumers and the geeks among us. It's definitely more, high-end shareholder stuff. But I don't think there was anything really spectacular that we hadn't heard before. I think Torsten kind of reiterated a lot of stuff.
There's this myth that you can just throw programmers at stuff, and it was asked in a question here. You have $2 billion in the bank. Why don't you spend every penny of that to get BlackBerry 10 out last week? But that's almost never. I mean, if you look at basic complexity theory, that's almost never the answer to anything. And I think they handled that well, at least.
Yeah, I think you're right about that too. I mean, you can't buy your way out of that problem, and I did agree with you there. They answered the question well. Mm-hmm. I don't think they said really anything new. I'm a bit disappointed that Torsten didn't have a better rehearsed set of remarks.
Right. But, yeah, I think it was really nothing we hadn't heard before. I mean, they talked about their core structure and just different aspects of things. But at some point in time, whether it was the earnings call or just through, different interviews and such, we've pretty much heard it all before. So, I don't think there's anything spectacular. But
I think that question about code integration, it was confirmed then that it's not about biz and bez and back end stuff. It's about APIs and it's about the actual OS itself, right?
I think also the QNX never really had a face. It was embedded in everything, nuclear power plants, cars, but just to make an entire UI layer, it's not trivial. If you look at Apple trying to make OS 10 out of FreeBSD, it took years to get it right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, QNX is not a full OS on its own, right? It's a microkernel architecture, and it doesn't have a user interface. It doesn't have all the APIs that RIM would need to create. It doesn't have any core apps.
They're building that stuff as they go along. They're building all of these APIs. None of it's available right now because they're building it.
I think that's what a lot of people don't quite get either. I did a post, I guess it was last week. It was BlackBerry 10 platform versus product, and it was the concept that we have to grasp is that they're building, an entirely new a new platform. It's like Renee said, just the amount of time Apple takes. It's not so scrutinized, but it takes years to get these things. So people are just expecting it to be like another device launch, where our BlackBerry 10 devices with this new operating system. But it's unfortunately not that easy for them. They have to build this entire thing, and I think they're doing a pretty good job given the circumstances. Because what should take a hell of a lot longer than it is. They're still going to hopefully crank it out by
people forget,
the
but
beginning of 2013.
they spent 3 to 5 years in absolute secrecy making the iPhone, and then they came up on
Sure.
stage. They didn't have to do it in full public scrutiny the way Palm or RIM
Right.
did.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's, I mean, they're under the public eye the entire time that they're building it, so it's a lot more pressure that way. But I think that's the thing people have to grasp, is that they're working on an entirely, it's like, building Mac OS or building Windows or anything like that. It takes years, but none of them were ever, they're like, hey, we're going to start building this product and you're going to watch us through the whole thing. So,
and Chris could probably talk to this, but I mean, it's not easy. You can't, let's say we're going to spend $2 billion to get every engineer here. First, it's very hard for Apple, Google, anyone to get engineers. They're in such high demand. Second, you've got to train them. These engineers don't know QNX. They don't know what RIM is doing. It would take a long time to get them up to speed. And then you have to manage suddenly huge groups of people, which is less efficient than small teams. Apple and Google run on small teams for a reason. I think you can see in the chat room, people said, if I had $1 billion, I'd have a phone out to you in a couple of weeks. But I don't think it works that way.
No, it doesn't
it's
work.
not that easy. Well, unless you're running Google. Right?
Well, but Android evolved slowly over. The Android 4.1 is arguably a really solid system, but anyone who used the G1 on T-Mobile knows that it didn't start out that way.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. It took a long time for Android to become as good as it is.
And I think RIM with the playbook, they launched that early just to get it out, and they suffered for it. I think they're very hesitant to launch another product early the way Google did with Android.
Yeah, I'll tell you guys, a couple of weeks ago, so before the announcement happened that it was going to be delayed, I had a few conversations with good friends who know RIM really well, know the industry, and one of them in particular, he said to me, I hear that Thorsten might be thinking about, rushing this thing out. I don't think it's ready. It really shouldn't make the timeline that they're saying, and I'm worried he's going to rush it out. And then they announced the delay, and the follow-up conversation I had with this guy afterwards, he said, wow, I'm actually really impressed that he had the balls to delay it. That is the right move no matter what here, because yes, it sucks that it's delayed, but they cannot afford another playbook experience here.
I'm just glad that it's delayed for the right reason. Like, they didn't give us some bullshit excuse for it. Like, they're waiting on chipsets or whatever.
Yeah.
They just basically said, look, it's not ready. We're not doing it until it is ready, so...
We need an octa-core LTE engine, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, that's the truth. It's just simply not ready. And I can handle the truth more so than I can handle lies about it.
I
Tell
like
me.
that about him. He's much more straightforward about telling the truth, instead of like I put this in the chat room, but when Mike and Jim talked about the delay to Q4, they said it was a delay because of chipset availability and quote unquote certain other factors. Now we all know it was the certain other factors that was the real reason, but they mentioned that secondarily, and it seemed like a lie to us all at the time. And I'm glad we don't get that kind of crap out of Thorsten.
Chris,
Rock on.
The chat room is asking if the criticism of the board is warranted.
I'd have to just go back and think about sort of how many board members are new and over what period of time. Yes, it is warranted for some of the board members, but you gotta, like the ones who were all there during the Mike and Jim era, like Mike and Jim were the the leaders of the board and the leaders of the company. The board was just in their back pocket. The board was not a meaningful contributor to the business. It was a formality. So is the board responsible? Yes. But ultimately, they took that job knowing that it was Mike and Jim's board, and it's Mike and Jim's fault.
One thing I really liked, Adam, too, is they mentioned specifically drilling down, focusing on a smaller range of phones, and that's always been me. I'm not a BlackBerry fanatic the way you guys are, and you guys can keep track of every number. I mean, the flip phones, the Pearls, the Bowls, the Tours. I really like to hear that RIM was gonna maybe have a more constrained product line. I think that's very powerful.
Pleased to hear that.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been difficult. It hasn't been terrible. We're not like Android users by any means. We have our share of devices, and they've always been easy to keep track of for the most part because there's a handful of them. But definitely narrowing it down to 2 or 3, 4 even devices is going to be a hell of a lot easier. 'Cause there's not as many operating systems to worry about, as many different devices for developers to support, and all kinds of things. So just having that single touchscreen device and the QWERTY device, even if it's just the two, it's fantastic. I think it'll make us very happy campers for sure.
I remember
settle with 2 or 3 solid devices and just let that be the product line.
I remember Blaze telling me how many different screen resolutions, even in the recent past, with the new Torch and the Storm, and that was probably a really hard target for developers, Blaze.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at our wallpaper gallery, just scrolling down the page, we have all the listed resolutions of the devices and the devices under it, and it's just amazing. And it's funny because they drop back. We go from something like the Bold 9900, that's 640 by 480, and then you drop down to these newer devices which came out after that have lower screen resolution, and it's just super confusing across the board. So.
Yeah. We have some. Sorry, go ahead. I want to make sure that conversation's done.
You can talk. I was just gonna wrap it up in a minute, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say we should probably address there is a question coming up in the chat room here about the stock price and the fact that the market cap of this company is the market cap. Just for the rest of you, that's the value of the company, right? If you multiply the share price by how many shares there are, so it's the theoretical value of the company is really low now. So. Is it about to get taken over? And you got to remember, I mean, this stock has been really low by people's perceptions for a long time, and they have not had a formal takeover bid yet. So the only way that a company gets sold is if the management team and the board decide that they are going to look for a buyer, and in which case you're looking for a friendly takeover. And RIM has obviously decided not to do that for obvious reasons. Or you get a hostile takeover bid from another company where the company goes straight to the shareholders and makes them an offer. That's why I call it a hostile takeover. And those they certainly work. Okay, they can result in a takeover, but they screw up the company because a lot of the times the value of the company is the intellectual property that it has, which is in people's brains. And if people don't like the acquisition target, they leave. Right, so
how do you have a talent acquisition if the talent doesn't stay around?
Yeah, it's really hard to do hostile acquisitions of tech companies.
Who could even do it? I mean, you'd have to have substantial resources and want to be in the mobile game badly enough that you would forcibly take over RIM and not try to do a friendly merger. And that there doesn't seem like there's a lot of companies that would take that route.
Well, so often what happens is the hostile bid is thrown out just so that the ball gets rolling, and then the company will say, hey, this isn't in the best interest of shareholders. We reject this. We recommend you reject this bid, because that's what they do. They can't reject it. They just recommend to shareholders, you should reject this bid. And then discussions start happening, and often what will happen is that the deal will turn friendly, and the board of directors will agree eventually to a takeover at a higher price. So that can happen. I've seen that happen many times.
But are we talking, like, who would it be? A Facebook and Amazon? There seems like there's very few players in the market who actually need to get into mobile and have the resources to do it.
Yeah, I mean, Amazon clearly wants to get there, buying a 3D mapping company. Facebook, lots of talk about how, mobile is the future, and Facebook's, they're going to need to go there.
And nobody bought Palm. I mean, there was no line at the door to buy Palm from HP.
Yeah, I mean, it's not super obvious what's going to happen to me, and I don't think it's obvious to anybody. Other than that RIM, for now, is on a path to use Plan A, get BlackBerry 10 out the door. And if they do, it's really interesting here, right? Because this is either a stock position where people are going to make a lot of money on the upside if they recover, or this is just the waterfall. You're right in front of Niagara Falls, and everything's going to hell. And the stock has no downside, no downside protection. Like, if they run out of cash and they start burning cash, there's nothing stopping the stock from going essentially to zero.
Yeah, they don't have a secondary or a tertiary line of business the way an Apple or a Google or a Microsoft does, which makes them really unique in the surviving mobile company game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to buy more BlackBerry 7 devices just so I can get a BlackBerry 10 device.
Adam, we heard them mention the licensing out services, licensing out BBM. We know they're not doing that currently, but they seem to always mention it. Is that a safety net for them, or is that ship sailed?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think they can kind of always keep talking about it, and just kind of keeps people guessing, in my mind, because they go back and forth, and we've been hearing about it forever. We may license the software, we may license BBM. I think they're definitely kind of leaning away from putting BBM on any other platform, and keeping it as their own thing. Like Torsten said in the middle here, that it was their, BBM is kind of their platform that they're working off of. But, I think it's always going to be there, that it's something in the back of their minds that they can do. But for now, I think it's just all straight up BlackBerry 10 stuff, and I don't think that any of that will actually come to fruition in any way. So,
good question for Yumi in the chat room. Chris, is QNX a secondary revenue stream for RIM? Does it generate enough profit that could help them float?
Not. I don't think it generates enough, because if you remember, RIM paid, was it $300 and some odd million to buy it?
Yeah, so that's not a billion-dollar business.
I would be surprised if QNX was spitting off any more than a few tens of million a year separately from what RIM's doing with it.
Hike the price on the nuclear reactors.
Yeah, I mean, it's as meaningless as RIM selling the private jet, or one of the private jets. The interesting thing, though, is if you look at their balance sheet, so they've got this $2.2 billion. They've got, somebody mentioned a comment that I've talked about in the past, they've got real estate, they've got buildings, right? So they have real assets. And the value of the company now is down to under $4 billion, I think. If they can just show people that they can stem the cash flow situation, because it's getting worse, they're still generating cash, they will burn cash if things continue down this road. But if they can get that core program implemented, and they've talked about how the U.S. is stabilizing, if they can get into people's minds that, yes, the cash is stable and BB10 comes out, then all of a sudden it's game on, and you have really no downside on the stock. Oh, that's just a scenario. I'm not making a projection here, but it's interesting. This market value of this company is peanuts right now compared to their assets, and the only reason that happens is because people largely believe that they will be burning lots and lots of cash.
Blaze, here's an interesting.
I largely believe that right now.
Blaze, here's an interesting question. Is there any advantage to RIM not releasing in the fall and releasing in the spring instead? Because the fall you have iPhone 5, you'll have perhaps more Jelly Bean devices, Windows Phone 8. Does it give them a less crowded market to introduce their new phone?
At this point, I don't think it really matters when they release it, because if they go ahead and they release it after the iPhone 5 or whatever, even if they push it out, like even after the next Nexus device, it really doesn't matter, because there's still going to be people there that want to buy BlackBerry 10. There's people, believe it or not, there's people that are waiting to buy BlackBerry 10 devices just to be able to go ahead and support RIM at this point.
Just to have Kevin cut his hair.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw a picture of Kevin doing an interview, and he looks absolutely ridiculous. But anyway,
he does. I was thinking that, but I didn't want to say anything.
Hipster 2.0, baby.
I really don't think that it matters at all when RIM actually goes ahead and releases the device. I don't really have a definitive reason as to why it really doesn't matter. It's just, I don't think it does. They're in such a position right now that if they were to go ahead and put something out early, it would be half-baked. If they delay it, then you're getting a fully finalized and finished product. And that's what I want to see. I want to see them go ahead and put out a fully finalized, finished product and base RIM the company off of what they can really actually do with a fully complete product. Because let's be realistic, they haven't put out a fully baked product in quite a few years. Even the BlackBerry Bold 9900 had issues when it came out. The Playbook had issues when it came out. Even going back, I'd say the last device that they put out that was fully baked was probably like the Curve 8300.
Here's an interesting puck where the puck's going to be question, Umi. RIM is targeting the spring, but everyone else is also moving forward. How sensitive do they have to be to design this for the future and not just for today? And do they have to have a very clear roadmap for updating BlackBerry 10 quickly and consistently after release as well?
That's a mouthful.
Sorry.
Okay, I think that RIM needs to focus on today. The architecture has to be future ready, and I think we all know that it is because it's based on QNX. They need to have a solution in people's hands that is attractive for what we expect today. They need to. I don't buy into the philosophy that RIM needs to be leapfrogging the competition. They need to come out with something that people will look at and be proud of holding in their hands. And that doesn't mean it has to be so much better than an iPhone or so much better than an Android. It just has to be damn good. And they have to be ready so that they don't get stuck in this situation again in another couple of years. And I think that's what the rebuild of BlackBerry 10 as a platform is all about. Does that answer the question?
Unless Adam says no, I'm going to take it as a yes.
I'll take it as a yes.
So we're approaching a couple hours in here, so we should probably wrap up. Let's just go around and get everyone's thoughts on the call and on the future, and we'll start with Adam because he starts with A.
Oh, yay for me. I think for me, I mean, we got what I expected out of the meeting itself. It wasn't anything spectacular. I didn't expect to hear any crazy device announcements or anything like that. It was just a lot of reiteration of, pretty much what we already know and what we have to expect. So I didn't really have high expectations for it, so I was pretty much satisfied with it all, I guess you could say.
Umi, you've been a champion lately of media getting it right, and it's a persistent thing. I mean, we saw CNN and some other major people get stories wrong, and Aaron Sorkin's taking a big hammer to them with Newsroom the last couple of weeks. Is this just going to keep happening? Are you going to have to keep writing these editorials over and over again to fix mainstream media perceptions?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they just don't put enough care into it. There are not enough specialist reporters out there. They're the people that are in front of the camera or in front of their keyboard the most often are those who don't have the deep knowledge about the stories that we do, and they keep writing crap like RIM is cash flow negative or burning cash, and it's just not true. So we will keep hammering away at it.
So what do you think of the call, and what do you think for the next quarter?
I think the call, there was really nothing new and interesting. It kind of made me think that they still have the same communication problems. I think they could have come up with a much more powerful presentation for Torsten, but he does a good job when he's off the cuff just answering questions, but they need to be more prepared. They need to control their message. I want to see them get a CEO blog out there. And in terms of the company and the platform in the future, my main feelings are that the stock is far lower than it should be if they can survive. So they need to prove that they are an ongoing business here that will last. And then there's big upside for shareholders. But at the same time, we've seen RIM misexecute for years. So there are no guarantees. And if you're going to be investing in this company, you have to be prepared that you could lose it all. That's just being realistic. They need an ecosystem, so I need to see what they can do with BlackBerry 10 and then getting the core apps that we all want to see, third-party apps. Torsten talked about how great this system is going to be for media and games and that they'll deliver that. Well, I'd like to see it. We've been talking about Netflix and Skype. I just want to see it happen because if they can convince me that other developers big developers are supporting BlackBerry, then I think it's a platform that will survive.
That's your version of show me the berry.
Yeah.
Blaze?
Pretty much on par with Adam and Chris. There wasn't really anything new announced or, revealing in any of it. But like Chris said, I just want an ecosystem. I want a device that's fully baked. And I want a BlackBerry that I can be proud to go ahead and carry once again, as cheesy as that sounds. But yeah, overall, I mean, RIM's future is interesting, and I don't have any perception on how exactly it's going to play out for them, but some of the stuff that they're saying seems like they're starting to get it. Some of the stuff still seems like they're stuck back yesterday or 5 years ago. But I don't know. We're all here, and we'll find out how they end up.
Crackberry's not going anywhere. You're going to have to take that phone from Kevin's cold, dead hand.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel I'm Canadian, so I have a huge interest in seeing RIM succeed. It's just a point of national pride, but it is incredibly hard. It's such a competitive market, and RIM is forced to do it in public. Google and Apple had a lot of shielding when they were making their messy dog food, and RIM is just in the media every day, getting pounded every day. And I think it's great that Crackberry is there, giving them that moral support, being that platform champion, because there's only so much a company can legally say, and the fact that you guys are there saying everything that I'm sure they want to say, I think is fantastic for the community. So on behalf of people who love mobile in general and want a thriving multi-party ecosystem, I want to thank all of you for doing this today.
Cool.
Our
We'll
pleasure.
definitely we'll have some follow-up here, but everybody, thanks for tuning in.
Adam, where can we find out more about you?
I'm on a fairly popular website called crackberry.com, or you can track me down at a about me /Adam.
Umi?
On Twitter at CuMiastowski.
Blaze.
At Twitter, BLA1ZE, and Crackberry, of course, Android Central, and iMore.
You're everywhere. You're everywhere there's a phone.
It's true.
He's the man of many phones.
If he were Crackberry Kevin, he is once again on the ground. He is doing everything local, and we are broadcasting from the sidelines. I want to thank him. You can find him at Crackberry Kevin. You can find him on Google+. Just search for Kevin. He's everywhere. And you can find him at crackberry.com. You can find everybody at Crackberry. You can find me at Rene Ritchie. And you can find all of our shows at mobilenations.com/shows. The crackberry.com podcast will be back whenever Kevin damn well feels like it. And until then, Adam, take us home. Slam the mic.
Oh, sorry.
Adam out.
All right. And Kevin's on BNN, I think, any moment now. So
Tune
if
in.
anyone wants to tune in, go ahead.
His hair looks ridiculous.
Is that the BlackBerry News Network? Is that what that's called?
Yeah, that's it. Today it is BlackBerry News Network. And he's not cutting his hair, so I did, just to keep some balance.
Nice. All right, guys. See you soon. Thanks, everybody.
So, guys.
Bye.